you're taking that out of context, and then that's a defamation of character or some form of mashing up the truth. Where's the defense for that, or what would you say to somebody who's concerned about those kinds of issues of defamation of character? Say if Obama's speech is mixed up to the point where he's saying something different than he intended, or some other example like that.
Yeah, well, I don't think, the freedom to remix should mean that one shouldn't be criticized if you create fraudulent remixes, right? If it's pretty trivial now to edit a video to make it sound like somebody's saying exactly the opposite of what he said. And if your only purpose is to try to suggest fraud, then, you're a fraudster. I don't think there's any ambiguity. It's not, the fact that you did it with remix doesn't make it innocent. But on the other hand, I do think that, musicians in particular, and film people as well, they're a little bit precious in their own self-conception. I write books, and people read my books, and some people who read my books understand my books, and a lot of people who read my books, are confused or don't understand what I say. And a lot of people take what I say completely out of context and use it for the purpose of embarrassing me or criticizing me or making me seem like an idiot. Maybe I'm an idiot, but the point is, I don't ever think that the first thing I should do is launch a lawsuit to stop them from using my work in this particular way. But musicians, like Prince, doesn't think twice about the idea of invoking the law to stop people from using his words or his creativity in ways that he doesn't like. And when you talk to people like that about why do you think the law should be able to do this, or why do you think you should be able to use the law for this purpose, they have this very protected sense about how it's important to make sure that they're not marred or stained in the public's interpretation of them. And I just think that they just need to learn to suck it up. And they want to be famous, they want to be rich, they want to be out there. They got to put up with people using their stuff in ways that they wouldn't necessarily want them to use it. And if they don't want that, if they're really so sensitive to some high school kid remixing their video in a way that makes them look dumb, then they shouldn't be out there. They could choose to just be, a mechanic and not decide they want to be some kind of public musician. So I think that the standards that live with, the freedom to do things with books and to criticize and make fun of people who write books need to spread more generally to be films and music and every other form of creativity. Because the thing that we get when we open that up and make it free is invite a larger number of people to participate in that cultural criticism or remix activity, and that's what I think the most important thing is.
Like with the example with Radiohead.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what do you think would be the fair and balanced language? Well, it would be simpler, right?
Yeah, I think if you think about two kinds of things you can do with somebody else's creativity. One is just copy it, and the other is to remix it. And then you also think about two kinds of creators. People in the professional world, people are creating and selling their stuff, and amateurs, people are just creating stuff for the love of creativity, not for the money. Then put those two dimensions together and you have one category called amateur remix. I think amateur remix ought to be absolutely free of copyright regulation. Not fair use, but just absolutely free use. You should be able to engage in it. Nobody should ask a lawyer about what's permitted and what's not permitted. It just should be encouraged and off the radar screen as far as copyright goes. And at the other extreme, taking somebody's creative work and copying it in whole and selling it. So taking Radiohead's latest music and pirating it and then selling it to other people, that's the sort of thing that I think copyright law was primarily designed to regulate and to block. And I think it's completely appropriate for Radiohead to be able to control the commercial reward from copies of their music. And that leads then to categories that are more ambiguous. So, an amateur taking Radiohead's latest music and just sharing it for free with his 10,000 best friends. I think Radiohead has a right to get some money for that. And so I don't think that should be completely allowed, at least unless we had some kind of compulsory license or some way to compensate the artist. And at the other extreme, you imagine a professional remixer who takes content and makes a derivative work of it. Some of that I think needs to be free, like what Greg Gillis does. But some of it I think can properly be regulated, like if you take a book and want to turn it into a movie. So those are more complicated cases. But the two easy cases are, you shouldn't be in the business of selling other people's copies of other people's work without their permission, and you should be completely unregulated when you're doing things like remix classes where you're remixing other people's work and sharing it for free, not trying to profit off it, not trying to sell anything.
Don't you think that the YouTube case created the window for fair use in a sense?
Well, I think, it's complicated. Viacom has actually been quite progressive in some respects and quite regressive in other respects. So, suing YouTube, I think they had no good basis for their lawsuit. I think YouTube was protected by the DMCA. But on the other hand, Viacom has a pretty strict policy where they will not issue a takedown if the material has been remixed at all. So if you take The Daily Show and you post a whole show of The Daily Show, they'll get it taken down within 12 hours. But if you take The Daily Show and you do a remix of The Daily Show, they won't touch it. They won't complain about it. They won't do anything about it. And I think that's an appropriate line to draw. And so I kind of think they're going to become leaders in getting people to think about how remix creativity needs to be treated very differently.